Just before we get into today's episode, unfortunately I'm going to have to give another content warning. We're looking at 2 episodes today, both of which have content that people might find a tad upsetting. The first is Irresistible. The focus of Irresistible is a character who is a death fetishist, kind of implied necrophiliac, and does target and kill young women. The second episode is D-Handed Verletzt, which has a scene in which a girl recalls repressed memories, which include child abuse, rape, and the death of infants. Just bear in mind, we are going to be discussing all these things within the episode, so if you don't like the sound of that, please feel free to turn off now. We won't be offended.
Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And do we have any news?
No, unfortunately I don't this week.
Didn't you do a poll on Twitter, or do you want to get to that?
I'll get to that when we get to the relevant part of the episode.
Okay. Yeah, so we're still looking forward to going to the Science Museum to heckle Chris Carter.
Yeah, that's in a few weeks' time, in kind of mid-March.
We're not really going to heckle, but we might try and see if we can record part of it, at least to just have a clip of it or something.
If they'll allow us to.
Yeah, as long as they don't say explicitly you're not allowed to record this, or we'll record it.
This is true.
Okay, so I suppose we may as well just get straight on to our episodes.
Yeah, sure. As always, though, if you do have any news that you'd like us to share at the start of this, be it conventions coming up, competitions, any cool X-Files artwork you're working on, just let me know. There'll be information on how you can contact us at the end of this episode, and we're happy to talk about it for you.
Thank you. Okay, so our first episode this week is Irresistible. Directed by David Nutter, written by Chris Carter, and first broadcast on the 13th of Jan 1995. Guest stars, the obvious one would be Nick Chundlin as Donnie Faster, who we've seen him in a few things.
Oh, okay.
He's in Eraser as CIA agent Calderon. It's been too many years. He's in Con Air as Billy Bedlam Bedford. Sorry, I'm not making him sound very good here, am I? But he was in Buffy as Major Ellis in 2 episodes.
Okay.
I'm guessing season 4-ish. That sounds like the initiative.
Yeah, it does.
And of course, he will reprise this role in Horizon in a future season, and we'll get to that much later. Of the more interesting ones, we actually have Christine Wills, who plays Agent Karen E. Kossoff, who, to my surprise, recurs twice more in the same role in the Kalasharian Elegy.
Okay.
And then plays Sister Mary in The Founder's Mutation, all the way in season 11. Sorry, 10. Season 10. She's also in The Wicker Man, the remake.
Oh.
As Sister Violet. She's in Trick or Treat as Mrs. Henderson.
Okay, yep.
She's in Sucker Punch as the reception nurse.
Yeah.
She's in Dead Like Me as Dolores Herbig.
Ah, Mrs. Hebig.
Mrs. Herbig.
Mm.
And she's in Kingdom Hospital as Emma Warburton. Our other significant guest star is Glynis Davies as Ellen, who was in Tombs as Nelson, who I really don't remember. I'm guessing it's someone that Tombs is hearing.
Could be, yeah.
But she will recur again in season 3 as Monica Landis in Too Shy.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I remember her.
No one can forget her. Okay, so Irresistible. Donnie Faster is caught cutting the hair from a young girl at a funeral home and is immediately fired. Mulder and Scully go to Minneapolis at the request of FBI agent Mo Box, who suspects a desecrated grave is due to aliens via cattle mutilation. Mulder dismisses this theory and indicates a human suspect. Scully is disturbed by the sight. Mulder develops a profile of an escalating death fetishist who may resort to murder to find new victims. Faster, meanwhile, hires a sex worker and murders her after she discovers funerary wreaths in his bedroom. Faster then attends a night class at a local community college, but when he approaches a female classmate, she defends herself and Faster is arrested. He is placed in a cell opposite to a suspect for Mulder and Scully to interview and takes an interest in Scully. He is then released as the charges against him have been dropped. Scully is deeply troubled and returns to Washington and attends a counseling session. A fingerprint on the sex worker's body leads them to Faster. Mulder and Box raid his apartment but do not find him. Scully arrives back in Minneapolis and is driven off the road by Faster. He takes her to his mother's abandoned house. Mulder and Box track down Faster while Scully tries to escape. The pair of FBI agents arrive just in time to arrive faster, but while Scully insists she is okay, she breaks down in tears. The most surprising thing to me about this episode is when you actually break it down to what happens, there isn't actually much. It's a good episode, but basically nothing happened.
That was a really short for one of your descriptions.
I was just saying, it's just reading through it, it's a case of, but wait, hang on. There's nothing of substance in here. Not that I'm dissing the episode. It's a very effective, very creepy episode.
And to address the elephant in the room now, it is actually a non-supernatural episode as well, possibly the first one in the series.
Yes, and do you want to get into your poll?
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned it in your description just then, but throughout the episode, Scully and at least one of the characters see Donnie Faster kind of shapeshift into a demon.
Yeah.
And I did a poll on Twitter to ask you if you thought the episode was actually supernatural. And overwhelmingly, and I would agree with you because that's how I read it too, a majority of you think that there is nothing supernatural and that's just reflective of kind of Scully's fears and mental state at the time. Particularly as we get towards the end of the episode where she also sees him shapeshift into people like Charles Manson and things like that. There were one or two of you, however, who did comment it was ambiguous and you could read it that Donnie Faster actually is a demon.
Yeah, he's a bit of a rubbish demon if he is a demon.
It should be noticed as well that Chris Carter's intent with the episode is that it isn't supernatural.
Yes, and he was drawing on specific reports, I think, whether from Manson or from
Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy, of women literally reporting him shapeshifting before their eyes while in captivity.
I didn't get to verify if that's actually something that happened or not, I must admit. But yeah, that's what Chris Carter claimed, is it was some reports of people that Ted Bundy was holding hostage kind of said this about him.
Definitely creepy.
Indeed. So,
to pick somewhere to start with, I'm going to go with Mulder is a complete jerk in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, there are multiple levels to it, but I think you can start from the start with the whole, they get to the desecrated gravesite and the cattle mutilation kneeling is dismissed almost immediately. And Mulder's sort of talking to Scully about it, and she says, oh, why weren't you sort of so distracted by it? Because he reports seasoned veterans have just sort of crumbled at the sight of it. And he blithely replies with, oh, I prepared myself before we left from Washington. And you didn't warn Scully so that she could prepare herself, and you just hit her in the face with this.
On the flip side, maybe you could argue that it's a bit weird that Scully is so affected by it. Admittedly, this is Scully's kind of post-traumatic stress episode following Dwayne Barry in Ascension.
Yeah.
But Scully is a medical professional. She conducts autopsies. So a desecrated corpse, it's just struck me as slightly jarring that why would she be so affected by this?
Yeah, I agree with that one. We've got it both ways. It's Mulder could have warned her, and also Scully, you are weirdly sensitive to this one.
I'd like to think that it'd be more of a red flag for Mulder. He does get there by the end of the episode and realise it's affecting Scully. But he should have noticed, especially as a psychologist that he is, a lot quicker in the episode that really Scully is not coping well.
Yeah, and she's not telling the truth when she says she's fine.
Which again is just a kickback because I'm surprised Scully's not a gibbering wreck by the end of this episode, to be honest, given that this is the third time that a maniac has managed to take her hostage.
Yep. And this one should also then lead to some time off from the X-Files, which we know she doesn't get. And also, your point, though, of it being post-traumatic stress from Ascension and everything, is this should be where Firewalker fell, this episode.
Yeah, true.
This would make a far better sort of close that loop of...
when we haven't had any indication that Scully is struggling until now.
No, because in Firewalker, it was very much a case of, oh, I'm fine, Mulder, and then that was the last we heard of it. And this could be, the genuine character development of this has affected her very badly. It's
believable. By this point, she's had, Toombs has attacked her in her own apartment, Dwayne Barry's attacked her in her own apartment, and she was kidnapped, and God knows what happened to her after that. And she's also had the killer from Born Again, I think it was.
Yep.
She knows he's been in her apartment too. And now this guy has attacked her, kidnapped her, and almost killed her. You think this is possibly should be the breaking point, but it's a believable breaking point. There just should have been more indication that this was coming over the last 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, the X-Files, while it started to develop its ongoing conspiracy, if you contrast it to modern day season plot lines, it's not there. There's no connection between the episodes. There's no running threads, as it were. There's kind of these things that are completely divorced in the background. We'll have whole episodes that check out away from it and never refer to it.
Mm.
So it's like, I'm trying to think of a good modern example. I mean, even something like Buffy, which we actually touched on there, is Buffy's running plot lines were a lot more engaged than the X-Files' ones are.
It did pay attention to character development.
Yeah.
And who trusts who and who's been affected by what.
Yeah. Whereas X-Files is kind of a weird, we haven't done anything with Scully for a while, let's traumatize her again.
And like you say, more should come out of it from the end of the episode as well, because she completely breaks down when Mulder arrives on the scene.
Yeah, and she's still insisting she's fine. But again, Mulder, you as much as you could have warned her what you're going to see, because as far as Scully knew, you were going to see cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
And you knew exactly what this was before you got on the plane. Also, the fact that Mulder was abusing his work position to go to a football match.
Yep, true. That's purely why he's investigating this thing that he knows full well is not an X-File.
Yeah. I'm going to have to give props, though, to Agent Box, who is a tremendous guest character. One of the rare Mulder allies who is, can to engage absolutely with whatever crazy stuff Mulder says.
Yeah.
And believe him, and is fully supportive the entire way.
He's one of these ones that have called Mulder in because they respect him, which we've seen kind of increasingly.
Yeah, and he's just actually a very fun character.
It's kind of a shame that this is it for him, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he's been anything significant we've seen, and he's not listed on the X-Files again, so this is his one shot, unfortunately.
What a pity.
It is. I liked Agent Box. And must say as well that Donny Faster is a tremendous bit of casting.
He's really scary.
He is really scary, but you can also, I think you've made the point many times about Hannibal in the TV version, and how Mads Mikkelsen can do both ways. You can be utterly seductive and utterly cruel and vicious.
Yeah.
And Donny Faster, I don't think he can be charming, but it's because you know the depths he's already gone to. You can't, as a viewer, you can't find him charming, but you can see how people who don't know that.
It's particularly the bit where he's at the job interview in the episode, and he kind of compliments the woman's makeup and things like that.
Yeah, and he knows all the technical details, and he brings religion into it, and that he's a believer because the employer is a big Christian.
It's that thing that sociopaths do, where they know what to say and they know how to kind of charm people.
Yeah, but because you've had the setup at the funeral home, it's all skin crawling to the viewer, but you can understand how the woman doing the job interview isn't going to feel that.
That what is coming across to us as a viewer as being kind of slimy and creepy is actually coming across as charming and polite. Yeah,
soft-spoken, very knowledgeable, very polite, very just absolutely engaged with what he's doing.
It's the Ted Bundy effect again, though. We've already drawn the comparison with Ted Bundy being the inspiration for this episode, is that he was the one that was notorious for kind of lulling people into a false sense of security, because he was, to all intents and purposes, the man who was so nice next door who you couldn't believe would do this.
Absolutely. And on a similar note, there's the more heavy influence than we've had for a while of Silence of the Lambs on this episode.
Oh, very much so.
I was typically thinking of, and I've sadly forgotten who did it, but there was a video essay I watched relatively recently about Clarice and the gender of everyone around her in Silence of the Lambs, and like how everyone's mistrustful of her because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And that came through when Scully does the autopsy, and there are all these male officials milling around for some reason during her autopsy, which never happened.
Yeah, we've never seen anything like that before.
And I wonder if that's a conscious nod back to Silence of the Lambs again, and sort of just having Scully increasingly isolated in this male-centric profession.
You've kind of unconsciously got that Silence of the Lambs effect as well, because in Silence of the Lambs they bring Clarice in because they don't think Dr. Lecter will talk to a man.
Yeah.
They think a woman will get what they want out of him. Whereas in this, we see in the bit towards the end in the police station where Faster is immediately kind of interested in Scully. He's not interested in the men in the room.
No.
He fixates on her.
Absolutely. No time for the rest of them. And also good for tension as well. The annoying almost got him, because you think they've got him really early on, and then abruptly it turns out they've got the wrong guy, but Faster is right there.
Frustratingly so.
Yeah, and I don't know quite what to make of his social engineering. When he calls up the FBI, pretending to be an agent, but not Box or Mulder, asking when Scully's going to be back in Minneapolis, and people relay this, and even though people touch on the conversation of, did either of you ring the FBI, and everyone says no, no one stops to think there's any sinister implication behind it.
I suppose you wouldn't jump to something sinister about it.
You wouldn't, but it's still an oddity that everyone just kind of eclipses very quickly. And then that Scully manages to pick up a hire car, and apparently no one noticed her at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, sadly, Scully peril is not a great point for the episode.
No, it's a bit frustrating that the fact this seems to happen at least once or twice a season now to Scully, it's becoming a bit of a thing.
Yeah, I can see the argument they've got for it is that they've deliberately made Scully as non-passive as possible, with her actually escaping at least partially. She manages to get away from him and get into hiding and does fight back, but again, Mulder has to come in and rescue her ultimately.
I feel based on, there's a bit towards the end of the episode where Scully visits a FBI psychologist as well to have a conversation with her, and she comments on the fact that she feels helpless and out of control and she wants to feel in control again. But then that doesn't happen at the end of the episode. I felt that Scully should have been the one to incapacitate and defeat faster.
Yes.
Because ultimately she's saved by the men and she dissolves in tears at the end, so it's like, how's that helped Scully feel in control?
It really hasn't.
But then in the next episode, again, we're back to not mentioning this again.
Yeah, I think some of it's got to be because we are more used to how TV is constructed these days. This is very much in the vein of the days of old, like days of Quantum Leap and Star Trek, where you might get some season plots, but they're going to be very, very vague until you actually draw on them. And it's like in contrast to, again, like Hannibal, where the entire season is geared towards getting to a certain point.
True.
And everything feeds into it. So X-Files is a kind of a transition point in terms of how TV writing was working, where this was still basically you can tune in each week and without much of a problem.
Well, really, that's the purpose of Monster of the Week episodes like this, is they're standalone. You're not supposed to need to know the mythology to enjoy it.
No, and I do appreciate that trying to tie everything together is going to be a disaster, because it's already weird in the X-Files to have everything be on a concurrent. You've actually literally got God, you've got the aliens, you've got all the mutants, the strange creatures in the ice, the silicon-based life forms.
It's basically anything supernatural you can think of exists and is plausible. Be it aliens to religion to Bigfoot.
Yes. Weirdly enough, it puts me in mind, because I just recently finished it, of Deus Ex. One of the principles in Deus Ex is literally every conspiracy theory is true. So you have Majestic 12 and the Illuminati and people trying to merge themselves into a new god, all happening at the same time.
That's fun.
It is quite fun, and it's basically meant to be intentionally ridiculous of, yeah, you can't actually have this. And it's not impossible. They took some cues from the X-Files and just said, yeah, this is madness. You can't do this, but we're going to do it anyway.
You certainly feel the touch of the X-Files and the like of Control and video games of that sort.
Yeah, although I wonder how much of that is it's the Federal Bureau again, and you've got that bureaucratic feel to it.
Should we go back to the top? We're skipping all over the episode again.
We are, well, we tend to do that. Mulder not bothering to prepare his co-worker for what she's about to see. I think the problem with that still, though, is I would excuse that if Mulder bluntly said, you should be used to this, you do autopsies. If you had that one line in there, I'd have excused Mulder not telling her. But it's apparently the thought hadn't even entered his head to tell her.
Or even kind of acknowledging the fact of, I didn't expect this to affect you so much. Mulder realising then that Scully's not well.
Yeah, it's just that a few subtle hints of the episode that he has noticed her body language is off, but not by enough.
Yeah.
And then at the end, yeah, okay, you finally got her that she's going to break down crying, but Mulder, you need to rethink how you
it's
deal
kind
with
of as
things.
we noted a bit in Excelsior's Day, and Aubrey as well to a lesser extent, is the fact that Mulder doesn't seem to be very good at profiling women.
No.
He can read male characters and characters that are similar to him very well. He seems to struggle at reading women.
That's very true. And presumably this might be part of why he was dumbfounded in Eve so much.
Yeah.
He can't cope with Eve 6.
I was thinking Aubrey as well, where Scully immediately could see that woman was pregnant, and this completely bewildered Mulder.
Well, not only pregnant, but having an affair as well. She got that off very little contact.
It's women's intuition, which Mulder does not possess.
He's not even going to try and develop, is he? To go back to Mulder's flippancy as well, though, we also have this slightly troubling aspect again, that when they're called in when the body of the sex worker turns up, or was it a desecrated grave at that point? And Mulder's trying to watch the game on the TV rather than pay attention to what the agent box is telling him. Mulder has some kind of priorities.
It was a big game, it inferred.
I think this comes back to our point the other day of people give sport a carte blanche that no one else gets.
Even serial killers, apparently.
Even serial killers, who really should be a thing.
He's not really a serial killer, to be fair. I think he kills one or two people in the course of the episode. He doesn't get to the point of being a serial killer.
Possibly even only one, but he's on the way to being a serial killer, isn't he?
It's the Ed Gein effect. I seem to remember that they only ever proved that Ed Gein killed one person. But it was that escalation for, much like this one is, he desecrated graves and stole bodies from graves and things like that, and then built up to getting a body of his own.
Yes, and stuffed his cushions with hair. We saw that.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
I remember seeing the women's fingers in his freezer.
Yeah. Then he gets the sex worker and takes her home and wants to give her a bath, which is unusual, but, she rolls with it.
Is your hair treated?
Ooh. Ooh. But also, it's a cold bath, and I don't know what you got to say, Donnie. What point were you going to do the murdering? Because she's going to figure out it's a cold bath pretty quickly.
I love the way that scene escalates, though, because it starts off as being, okay, this is a bit weird and creepy, and you can see she's weirded out, but he's paying and she'll go with it. And then eventually she walks through into the bedroom and just sees the full kind of funeral wreaths and livery and all the rest of it.
Yeah, what the hell? I actually, in fact, got it macabre shrine in the bedroom. I think as well, as much as you say you only see him kill one person ultimately, there's at least the constant hint that he isn't going to stop, because it's not just the female classmate who he approaches. He takes a really big fascination in the teenage daughter of the woman he delivers the groceries to.
Oh, the woman who helpfully tells him that they always leave the door unlocked.
Yeah, because it's a safe neighbourhood, so it's always unlocked if we're not in. And goes, oh my god.
It's a weird thing. Even growing up in rural England, we didn't leave the doors unlocked. It's this weird neighbourhood mentality always gets me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to question if it's ever actually true. If there are actually these really quiet suburbs where basically people really don't lock their doors.
Faster gets increasingly nasty, even notwithstanding actually starting to kill people in this episode as well. Because what starts off as just cutting hair is then he's stealing fingernails and then he's cutting off fingers and all the rest of it. Is his MO is clearly getting worse and he's getting more and more disrespectful to these corpses.
Yeah, and just women in general.
It's inferred in the episode. You don't really find out what made Faster who he is, but his actions show that he has absolutely no respect for women whatsoever.
No, and it's attributed to his mother in some way.
But you don't find out
We don't find out why. I was just saying, then possibly his classmate's an interesting point of his escalation in the fact that he's still doing the smooth, soft-spoken thing. But something about him approaching her at that point is sending alarm bells off in his classmate's head. She's not receptive to him whatsoever.
Maybe you're feeling the kind of shadow of Ted Bundy there as well. I mean, that was his famous thing, was approaching women and seeing vulnerable and stuffing them into his car. You now have this mentality as a woman as you don't have to help people if you're in a vulnerable position. As it used to be the prevailing idea of, oh, if someone's in need, you should help them. And people like Ted Bundy have absolutely ruined this mentality.
Yeah, don't be nice to men even if they are injured.
But in the same way here, as he's asking her questions of things that happen in class and he's getting closer and closer and eventually it's too much for her.
Yeah. But again, that's the escalation of that he wouldn't have done that at first. It's as he's sort of progressing through his pathology, I'm guessing. He's getting more and more...
confident.
Confident or eager to have more macabre stuff for his various whims.
Which, it should be noted as well, is he's never expressively said to be a necrophiliac, but you've always got that in the back of your mind while watching it.
Yeah, well, only because they weren't allowed to call him a necrophiliac.
Yeah, I read the original script, kind of got thrown out because you couldn't show this on network TV. So that's why he became the death fetishist rather than specifically the necrophiliac.
Which is deeply weird phrasing, I think.
Even calling him a fetishist, though, you're inferring there's some kind of, like, sexual nature to this.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's the whole, this is going to get past standards and practices, whereas the necrophiliac part isn't.
We can infer that he's getting off on this, but not that he's actually having sex with corpses, I guess.
So after that, Donnie is arrested but let go ultimately because the woman drops charges. For some reason, there's probably something to get into why she decided to do that, but not through his influence.
Maybe the fact that he never actually did anything to her.
It could be. And then Donnie finally encounters Scully and takes a decided interest in her. Scully almost gets away cleanly by going back to Washington, insisting the entire time she's fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, the episode would have been derailed had she not decided to come back.
Indeed, but the counseling session, there was the interesting points that the counselor brought up, like how Scully was talking about herself in the second person the entire time.
Mm.
For all you scholarshipers, Scully does say she'll trust Mulder with her own life. I don't think she should complain about him not warning about cases, but anyway.
And not realising that she's struggling until 2/3 of the way through the episode when he finally suggests that she might want to sit this one out.
Yeah. Though Scully does insist that she doesn't want Mulder to know how much it's bothering her. And I'm wondering if we're getting into... Female FBI agents aren't such a big thing, but they're still an oddity, and it's only a few years after Silence of the Lambs, and that was a huge thing at that point in time. Of does Scully feel the need to prove herself?
I imagine you do. It's law enforcement in general is a very male-dominated world. So I imagine that Scully does not want to feel like she can't do everything that her male co-workers can do.
Yeah. So she's going to just carry on regardless, even if Mulder's saying, I've seen every other kind of agent just drop if they encounter this kind of grave desecration thing.
The same sense, though, if you're the woman in drop, you seem even weaker.
Yeah, well, if it's you're a man in your drop, you'll be blamed on it's a horrible thing. If you're a woman, it'll be a case of, well, women can't cope with this.
Mm.
And also, again, in terms of the episode seeming to derail, Pastor is identified strangely early on, and that doesn't help anything. He's already abandoned his apartment, apparently.
Yeah. Just leaving some tidbits in the freezer.
A finger in the Brussels sprouts, I noted down.
It's oddly comical when you put it that way.
So then, unfortunately, we get Scully is at the hands of Donnie, and Mulder and Box have to figure out where. I mean, Box does at least give them the vital clue at the last second. Okay, so where is Donnie going to go? Oh, not to his mother's, because you said he hated her.
Guess it makes it kind of odd that he does technically go to his mother's on that basis.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we don't get... Because we know she's dead, and we know she moved to Florida. And, again, I'm guessing it's the whole we don't have enough time to get into why Donnie is like this. The more interesting part is that he's operating like this in the present, rather than what led him to be here. But, yeah, we've got some weird bits and pieces that seem to hint at something else that don't actually get pulled on properly. Yeah, and the constant depictions of Donnie as a demon.
And various other serial killers.
The demon seems to be the more recurring one, though, because you see that a few times.
I do think there is a vagueness with the demon as well, because it makes sense for Scully in her frame of mind, and Scully being a religious person as well, seeing him as a demon. But you first get a glimpse of Donnie as a demon right at the start. It's just a random worker in the morgue in the first scene.
Yeah.
And he sees him at a distance as a demon, but why he would see that is based on the symbolism of it later, just seems a bit off.
It does. I mean, I think the only thing I can think of is it trying to keep you interested in the cold open, because otherwise, as you said, it's a completely mundane episode.
I won't go as far as mundane.
Well, no, okay, not mundane.
Those everyday escalating death fetishists.
I mean, mundane in the sense of major dissension. So it's mundane in terms of normal human stuff rather than supernatural.
Yeah, but at the time when that orderly sees Faster as the demon, Faster hasn't even done anything to that guy's perception. He's just kind of stood up next to a gurney.
Yeah.
And it's only after he approaches him that he sees that he's cutting the girl's hair.
So it is very odd they put that moment in at all. Yeah, I don't know why that's in there.
It's just misdirection, and it makes you think it's a supernatural episode when it's not.
Yeah.
Which will be why people in our poll were saying the fact that you can take it as ambiguous. That's the scene that makes it ambiguous, really.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else for this episode?
There's a phrase that Scully uses when she says that she worries about being paralysed in the face of evil, and that's kind of how it ends up at the end of the episode as well. Is literally she has Faster incapacitated and freezes instead of shooting him.
Yeah.
So Scully literally, her fears have come to light. Again, how this is supposed to help her confidence going forward, I don't know. But Scully has proven that, indeed, yep, she would be paralysed in the face of pure evil.
If the episode doesn't get a direct follow-up or mentioned again, we can basically take it as read as it didn't happen. Long term.
We just said a wizard did it.
Yeah, I mean, well, as we've already said, the after effects of doing Barrier and Ascension aren't here anymore, and this episode would make more sense if it was a direct follow-on from One Breath.
It's like you said when we looked at Firewalker, Scully needs more time to recover.
Yeah, you needed that bridge episode of her coming back in and a...
Maybe this could have been it, in fact.
Yeah, this would have made a better one than Firewalker, that's for sure.
It's low-key. You could have just had Scully in as a medical expert and having it affect her that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alas.
But it feels like splitting hairs. I don't like what they've done with Scully in this episode especially, but on the whole, the episode is great. It's probably the scariest one so far.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate nuisance of it. It's a really good episode, but to get it to work is detrimental to Scully's character.
It would be less frustrating if it was a lasting detriment, though. It would be something that over the next few episodes Scully could recover from.
Yeah, but no, it's a case of, no, by the time we get to Verletzt, you're all fine, Scully. You're going to look at that dead teenager with his eyes cut out and his heart removed and not even blink.
Yeah, that kind of desecration's fine.
Oh, so if it had been a girl there, then you'd have been freaked out.
You make it sound more sexist there.
I do, but then again, that's the
at the same time, admittedly,
that's what you got to take from this, though, isn't it?
I'm not a medical professional, but I'd like to think that somebody who's been freshly murdered is a lot more upsetting than somebody who's been dead a while and has been dug up and desecrated.
Yes, and also, it's not like Scully hasn't dug up graves. Pilot. She's done autopsies of women, like in Miracle Man.
Yep, true.
This is not her first rodeo by any stretch of the imagination.
In fact, it's generally Mulder that we see getting upset about young girls. I've always kind of assumed it's that girl on the slab that Scully's autopsy makes him think of Samantha or something.
Apparently not. Any other notes, or shall we move on to...
No, I think you've covered everything.
Cool. Okay, so our second episode is Verletzt. Directed by Kim Manners, written by Morgan and Wong, their last episode for a while. Do you want to know what they come back with?
Go on.
So Morgan and Wong left at this point to work on Space Above and Beyond, the poor people, and will return in X-Files Season 4. Their first episode in Season 4 is Home.
Oh.
Morgan and Wong, what is wrong with you?
In fairness, a lot of people like Home.
I know, but... well, it might be a good episode again, but it's one of those whole... Yeah, it's good, but I don't actually want to watch it. Because there's a distinction, isn't there, between competent and actually enjoyable.
True.
Anyway, first broadcast on the 27th of January, 1995. Guest stars. We've hit the trifecta on our Frasier connections. We can't get any bigger than Bob Bulldog Briscoe.
Ruff.
Dan Butler plays Jim Alsbury. But yes, so this is one of the more regular guest stars of Frasier. I don't think we get anyone more important than him, because unless I've forgotten Kelsey Grammer or David Hyde Pierce or one of the other ones making a cameo.
No, I think Bulldog's the biggest one.
I think he's our biggest one so far. Other things he's been in, and this was kind of interesting. He was in Manhunter as Jimmy Price. The other Silence of the Lambs adaptation?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yep, correct.
He's also in Silence of the Lambs as Roden.
Yep.
Enemy of the State as NSA Director Admiral Schaefer, which is kind of appropriate for the X-Files.
Yeah.
He was in Carol in the City as Kenneth Arabian.
Okay.
I can't remember that at all. He was in Star Trek Voyager.
Everyone
Do not
has.
remember. I'm going to have to look this up now, because Bob Bulldog Briscoe in Star Trek Voyager is unfair, I know, but...
It could be because he was under 5 inches of Ferengi makeup or something.
Yeah, of course. Mrs. Paddock, rather sadly, we've not seen anything else ever.
Pity.
But Heather McComb, who played Shannon Asbury, will have a regular role on Millennium.
Okay.
So look forward to her later.
Oh, I should have noted that previously, actually.
Oh, that's true.
Irresistible was one of Chris Carter's favourite episodes, in fact, and it was the inspiration that kind of inspired him to create Millennium later.
I suppose it makes sense, because, so do a slight tangent, is I remember a trailer for Millennium, because we've never seriously watched it, but it's Frank Black approaching a stretcher with the blanket over it, and he just sort of says, killer, cut out their eyes, cut off his fingers, and they sort of go, the man with the X-ray vision, because he hasn't taken the blanket away or anything. So, yeah, I don't know what Frank Black actually can do. That's going to be kind of a curious one.
I think he's a psychic based on the Millennium episode of The X-Files.
And, of course, we have Larry Musser playing Sheriff John Oakes, who will recur 3 more times as Detective Manners in Jose Chunks from Outer Space.
Legend.
As Denny Markham in Unrequited. And as Jack Bonsaint in Chinga.
He's certainly one of my favourite X-Files guest stars.
Oh, we do like Mr. Musser. But anyway, would you like to give us a synopsis of Verletzt?
I will do my best.
Or is it Verletzt?
Verletzt. It's German for the hand that wounds. The episode this time takes place in the fictional town of Milford Haven, which is in New Hampshire. The episode opens on a group of high school faculty members who are having a meeting, discussing various things, including what play the school is going to be putting on. The adults in question seem pretty conservative at first, but at the end of the meeting they all light red candles and begin to recite a satanic chant in German, which includes the title Die Hand die Verletzt, or The Hand That Wounds. Later that night we see a group of students going out to a place in the woods to practice black magic. It's all really an attempt from the two boys in the group to score with the two girls. However, when they begin this experiment, weird things start to happen, such as flames bursting from the ground, and all of the teenagers try to flee. The body of one boy is found mutilated the following morning with his eyes and heart cut out. This is what leads Mulder and Scully, of course, to come to the area to investigate, on the local sheriff's claim that it's all to do with satanic rituals and witchcraft. Although Scully is very quick to dismiss this, even though it looks like a typical kind of satanic panic sort of event, things start to get weird when almost immediately frogs begin to fall out from the sky. And Mulder also notes that water in the school drinking fountain is draining the wrong way, incorrectly citing the Coriolis effect as a cause of this. We also see into the class where the surviving students are not coping terribly well. It's a biology class and their teacher is absent. He's been replaced by a substitute who's called Phyllis Paddock. We very quickly, over the course of the episode, of course, learn that Miss Paddock is pretty much responsible for everything that's going on here, but at first she just seems kind of oddly well-meaning and oddly interested in kind of counselling these poor affected students. In Miss Paddock's biology class, they begin to dissect fetal pigs, at which point one of the girls who survived the previous night, Shannon, begins to suffer a mental breakdown and hallucinates that the pig is alive. She meets with Mulder and Scully after the event and tells them that Osbury, her father, and a group of other Satanists repeatedly raped and impregnated her during her rituals, following which sacrificing their babies, as well as Shannon's 8-year-old sister. Osbury, the person she's accused of this, is her stepfather, but he's also one of these members of the school board that we saw meeting earlier. Mulder and Scully, of course, visit Osbury at his home, and he denies all the accusations made against him, however, won't let Mulder look in his cellar, which is the place where Shannon claims that all her babies have been buried. Scully also talks to Osbury's wife and brings up the supposed death of the 8-year-old sibling, which begins to throw doubt into all of Shannon's story because the mother reveals the fact that indeed Shannon did have a sister, but she died at 8 weeks old, not 8 years like Shannon had claimed. It seems that whatever Shannon is remembering might not be entirely accurate. We cut back to the school where we see that Shannon has stayed after school. She's determined to make up on her assignment by actually dissecting the pig. Miss Paddock takes a bracelet off her, supposedly to keep it safe and make sure it doesn't get any blood or gore on it. And off-camera we see that she uses it to cast a spell. This causes Shannon to slit her wrists and presumably die. Later, after this horrifying event, Osbury speaks with the other Satanists and he learns that they're planning on using Shannon as a scapegoat to pin the death of the other teenager directly on her, and also kind of cast all suspicious eyes away from the things that they are doing. This causes Osbury to break ranks as he thinks it's despicable, and therefore he admits the existence of their sect to Mulder. He gives a true account of what did happen when Shannon was present. There were certain rituals that involved children because the blood of children was seen as being sacred to them. However, they skipped over the rituals that were overly violent or that they didn't like, and just kind of did the more cheerful stuff. They also performed some hypnosis on all the children involved after the fact. He thinks that Shannon's false recollection of what happened might be a mixture of this kind of hypnotic trance weakening and also her exposure to kind of recent sensational media that posts Satanists in a bad light. While Mulder is having this conversation with Osbury, Scully researches into Mrs. Paddock. They discover some disquieting things about her. The teacher that she has replaced suddenly and mysteriously came down with necrotizing fasciitis or the flesh-eating virus. However, although Scully was suspicious about Paddock, her background check shows that there's nothing suspicious about her whatsoever and she has been hired genuinely. Though we do see off stage that Miss Paddock is casting another spell on Scully as this happens, So it's questionable how much of this thing that Scully's seeing is caused by whatever spell's being cast. Miss Paddock also uses her powers to contact Mulder by phone, making the phone call sound like it is Scully in trouble. Mulder handcuffs Orsbury in the basement of his home to make sure he can't escape, and then leaves to save Scully. As soon as Mulder has left, a giant snake, which we previously saw in a tank in Miss Paddock's classroom, appears and slithers down the stairs. It then devours Orsbury whole. Mulder finds out that Scully never actually called him. However, the two rush to Miss Paddock's classroom and find that she's seemingly been attacked by the remaining Satanists. They go and search the rest of the school for them. The Satanists capture the two agents, convinced that they need to perform a sacrifice to regain favour with the devil and make up for the fact that they have been just kind of diluting their faith and not performing these rituals correctly for years before it is too late. As they are about to kill Mulder and Scully, Miss Paddock causes them to instead commit suicide, confirming that indeed it was far too late for them to redeem themselves for this. The agents manage to escape imprisonment and find that Miss Paddock has left. All that remains is a message that she has left on the chalkboard behind her desk, which states, "Goodbye, it's been nice working with you."
Thank you. I like this episode, and it's one of the ones where I'm not sure you can really tell if it's meant to be a comedy or a horror or a mixture of both. It certainly does feel like a mixture of both.
I'm going to go further. As I remembered from last time we've watched the series through, this is one of my favourite episodes of The X-Files, and I think it's really everything I'm looking for in a Monster of the Week episode.
This one is very blackly comic, more blackly comic than we'll ever get again, I think.
Yeah. It's, as you said, there are a couple of others that I feel have a similar tone to it, but it is really hard to call it a comic episode because it's quite creepy as well.
Yeah, and it's things like Shannon's story is meant to be ridiculous, but it's also really horrible.
Really graphic.
But then you've also got just that absurdity of the lapsed faith Satanists, which is fantastic.
It's kind of a nice level to it because it's sort of a commentary on these people who reportedly are Christian but don't actually practice anything.
Yeah, so they just do.
So you've got the non-practicing Satanists.
So going through the motions, kind of all Satanists. And I love the fact they keep denouncing Satanism every chance they get.
Yeah.
So, oh look, Satanism affecting our kids. It's like the absolute hypocrisy of everything they're saying.
I love the way it turns around so quickly in the opening sting as well, where the show that they're denouncing for the school play is Jesus Christ Superstar. And you first think, oh, wow, they're super conservative. It's like, no, wait, they're Satanists.
Yeah, it's a whole different reason it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
But I also like it's that mixture of the tabloid view of Satanism and cults in the 90s. This is very much a current thing. And like the FBI doing the investigation of, if this was true, tens of thousands of people would be dying every year, being conducted by thousands of people. It's just implausible.
It's kind of harping on that era, like the more recent season of Stranger Things did. The idea of we're in the age where everything is viewed as being witchcraft, like Dungeons and Dragons and rock music and everything else. All of these things are eroding our children's morals and causing them to turn away from the good Lord to Satanism, that sort of mentality to it.
Yeah, but then you've also got the teens using this as an excuse to freak girls out in the middle of the night so they'll be more willing to cling tight to them.
Oddly reciting this kind of satanic ritual that apparently was just in a random book in the school library.
I do like the excuse of ultimately, well, we did it for accuracy. And he's one of the ones who survives, because it's the other boy and girl just managed to sort of escape the episode without mention again.
It's, I think, purely Miss Paddock has this trail to get to the adults that she needs to punish.
Yeah.
Even Mulder and Scully don't get killed off when they could easily be at the end of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's Miss Paddock is avoiding the collateral damage. She's there to punish them.
Oh, as I think you like saying a lot of times, she is lawful evil.
She is lawful evil, yeah.
Yep, she won't touch you if you're not in her way.
Arguably, she's the devil herself as well, given that the ritual they perform at the start of the episode is called something like the ritual of Azazel. So I guess we've got to assume that this is Azazel that's come down to punish them.
Absolutely.
And she's magnificent.
Yes, it's a shame we've not seen her anything else, but she's a really good guest star because she does, like, she half feels like the best teacher you've ever had when she's in teacher mode.
And then you cut to these kind of cult, like, spells she's casting where she's speaking in tongues over a flame.
I like the fact that the devil doesn't seem to be archaic. because she's influencing what Scully's reading on her computer.
Yeah.
Because she created the fake background check and everything for her and all the rest of it. And actually phones Scully, so he phones Mulder using Scully's voice. Like, not old school Satan at all here. Very much up to date with modern technology.
It's like, there's a line in the Neil Gaiman book Good Omens that I really like, where it's the most evil thing that Crawley, one of the protagonists, has done, is tying up all the phone lines in central London at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And he's trying to tell this to two demons who have done things like corrupted a priest and things like that. And a politician. And they can't understand why he believes that tying up the phone lines in central London is the most evil thing. And it's just perfect. That's modern Satanism for you. Yeah,
there was also the thing about software contracts, where basically it's the lack of liability in software contracts. So we sent them down to the people making the Eternal Damnation contract and said, learn, guys.
Yeah.
One of the current things running through the episode as well, though, is the invocation of they, which just get pointed out a few times, because it's like, they say it's a black altar, and they say they're corrupting our kids and all the rest of it.
Mm.
The unseen and unpindownable they, who are the source of all evil, of course.
Yeah.
Fill in the blanks. And we get our reign of frogs, that's a first for the X-Files, I think.
Apparently, that I feel a bit bad for it as well, is they couldn't get fake frogs looking right, so that is actual frogs being dropped from a low height, filmed to make it look like they're falling from the sky.
Poor frogs.
I feel horrible for them. The poor little things.
I'm sure they had fun.
As long as they're okay.
I'm sure they're okay.
Frog endangerment.
But again, as we said for Irresistible, Scully just looks at the body with the heart cut out and the eyes removed and just says, yeah, fine.
As you said, there was a teenage boy.
She didn't care.
That, for some reason, is a lot less upsetting.
Yeah. They find the page from the book and that sends them to Crowley High School. Really going all in on our references here, aren't we, Morgan and Wong?
Mrs. Paddock's name, it should be noted, is taken from the start of Macbeth.
Ah, okay.
Paddock the Toad Demon appears in the first scene of Macbeth.
Okay.
So you have more references beyond that.
Yeah. I do like, as you touched on in your summary, it's the level of just... Again, it's the whole... How blackly comic is this episode with the whole... Yeah, the regular science teacher who took 2 sick days in 15 years has come down with necrotizing fasciitis. Of all the things you could do to this guy, you chose the flesh-eating virus.
It's a horrible disease that just sounds hilarious when used in this circumstance, I think.
Oh yeah, any of the circumstances is awful, but this is what he came down with. His third sick day.
It's not something subtle like, he's got the flu or something like that.
He broke his leg, literally anything of the normal ones. No, we're going right up there. But yeah, to come back to the point of this is Mrs. Paddock sort of enforcing the old ways. She's adapted to the modern way, but she's going to enforce the old rituals. Is the fact the dead body was laid out according to their rites. So this is how you're meant to lay out the dead bodies, the thing they've stopped doing for a while. I mean, presumably then it's pure coincidence that these teens managed to summon her up, because otherwise the PTA or the group would have gone on being, Satanists in name only. And it wasn't until they actually invoked this right that she could come and then say, well, you're all going to pay for this.
I guess it's one of those morality stories with be careful what you wish for in a way. Evoking these higher powers is phenomenally a bad idea in horror stories because they might actually hear you.
Yes. And she did. Mrs. Paddock, she feels like she's the dream substitute teacher, the one you wish you could have all the time.
So friendly, so understanding.
Absolutely, apparently willing to make all the time in the world, make little jokes, just generally be a good teacher. She's got a hardened eyes in her desk drawer. It's fine.
Takes really bad care of her snake, though.
She does.
What was with that little tank with the enormous Burmese python in it?
It isn't actually totally clear if that's her snake or that was the school snake. I mean, that could be just the school is rubbish with snakes as well.
Yeah, but still.
It needs a bigger tank, yeah, I'm aware.
That thing should have an enormous tank, and it's in a tank that's all of 3 foot square on her desk.
Yeah, and she doesn't even try to tempt it, just throws the fetal pig in there. Poor snake.
Poor baby.
The snake gets a very good meal.
Yeah, I'll get onto that.
Yeah, there's some problems with that. We can come back again to Mulder being willing to believe stuff. He doesn't believe the tabloid Satanism that the group are trying to blame. But then he's also very keen to think that Shannon has repressed memories.
Mulder is an ardent believer in repressed memories, though.
But it's also one of that whole Blackley comic thing where she breaks down and runs out crying And Mulder pursues her going, Shannon, you may be trying to remember. It's like, is this the best way, Mulder?
I feel Mulder's been reading the script again.
Admittedly, that is he makes some startling leaps ahead of time.
But Mulder, it's harking back to Born Again, where Mulder was so intent on uncovering these repressed memories that he will actually absolutely break someone to do so.
Absolutely.
It also feeds into the fact that repressed memories are really unreliable, which again, harking back to Mulder, who's hinged his entire worldview on what's happened to Samantha on his repressed memories.
Yep.
Still makes me worry that Mulder's not remembering things the way they actually are.
Well, I mean, as much as it's unintentional, we've already got a distinct difference between Mulder's reported memories in Conduit and the depiction of them in Little Green Men, as much as we know that Morgan and Wong didn't watch an episode.
But mostly, on the level of this, is the things Shannon's remembered have very little ground in the truth.
No, there's bits and pieces. It's like the dirt floor and the red walls, and the fact they were being done in Satanism rituals, but then everything else is the tabloid sensationalist stuff.
Which is really easy to disprove as well, because they very quickly disprove the fact that she's ever had sex in the episode, so therefore she hasn't given birth to 3 children or whatever she claims.
And her sister died when she was 8 weeks old rather than 8 years old.
She specifically says it was 8 weeks old and it was made to look like an accident, so she's evidently got some big false memory of what went on here.
Yeah, and it's those memories which I think it's got to be the sort of nadir blackest comedic part of it, because what she's saying is so implausible and turns out to have such little basis in the truth. At the same time, it's absolutely horrendous stuff she's actually saying.
Yeah, I was of two minds about the content warning for this, because it doesn't technically happen.
No, and it's also, you're not meant to take it seriously, but you are meant to take it seriously enough for like 10 minutes before they start to pull out the sort of foundations of it.
Yeah, that's why I decided to mention. But of course, you see nothing. It turns out all to be falsified. It's just a really gross description of something.
Yeah. Deliberately gone to the shocking extremes. Again, it's the tabloid Satanism is what we're going for. To go to visit Jim Asprey at home with his wife, and there's a secret basement where the door slams, supernatural forces. Not entirely sure why that door slammed, because that's not going to be...
I'm not sure either.
But we have the moment which you are very familiar when we play Call of Cthulhu of, did you do it? Mulder just blurts it straight out.
When I do my Call of Cthulhu games with you guys, I love it when one of you just blurts, did you do it? It throws me every single time.
Well, one time it nearly got us killed. So, you know, that was a revenge tactic one time.
Yes, I mean, no.
I mean, maybe. But yeah, it's the most interesting part of the scene, I thought, though, was that Jim Asprey is quoting the Bible at this point, and Mulder immediately just turns on and says, even the devil can quote scripture. And it feels a bit to me like, while that is completely true, it's one of these whole, oh, I knew you'd say that, so you'd say the opposite thing again.
I'd like to question as well, based on Miracle Man and asides we've had, is Scully believes in a Christian God, Mulder does not. Why is Mulder so quick to believe in the devil? Doesn't the existence of the devil infer the existence of God?
One would think. But yeah, that's a good point. This should be a Scully-centric episode. Morgan and Wong, what are you doing?
But if Mulder is so quick to accept that the devil might exist, he's so dismissive of God or Christianity or anything like that.
Yeah.
But Satanism, that's fine.
Again, we're running into the problem of the X-Files has a macro view of everything's true, which is really strange because you've got so many different systems conflicting.
Except you've got on the basis of things that Mulder doesn't believe so far is God and alien rape.
Yes.
Are the two things that are just too out there for Mulder to believe.
Yep. Everything else is fine.
Mm.
Though that is followed up. So again, it's the whole, that weird balancing of comedy and horror, because when we follow up with the scene where Shannon's autopsying the pig and Miss Paddock makes her commit suicide.
Really nasty scene.
A very nasty scene. And I think the most horrible part of it is Mrs. Paddock's build-up to it is being, again, the best teacher, saying, oh, do you want to give me your bracelet to hang on to? You don't want to get it lost in the innards of a pig. Being absolutely helpful and just doing the nice things. And she's going to use it to control you.
It also kind of sets you on edge because the previous fetal pig scene where Shannon ran out it had this really, actually quite neat practical effect where the pig came to life.
Yeah.
So you saw its little heart beating and it gets the wiggles, the kind of pig fetus in the tray. Really, really gross, suddenly creepy thing. And so you're already upset the second that she's putting a scalpel to one of these pigs again.
Yeah.
That, all right, what's going to happen this time? But it goes a completely different way.
I think that's the nadir of the horror, because that's like the worst it gets. Because then we cut to nighttime and there's a thunderstorm, and we've got like the absolute typical horror movie setup.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Yeah, and it just is. And we're just gonna go with that from now on. I do like, though, what makes Jim Osprey sort of split from the others is the fact that we're just going to blame your daughter for this.
And that's when they've gone too far.
Yeah, it's a whole... but then it's also weirdly re-energizing their faith, but it's still too late for them all. And it's interesting as well, though, that while you think Mrs. Paddock is sort of being the best undercover operative ever, they're still picking up on oddities about her. Because they sort of notice the smell of incense in the office, and though she's got an excuse prepared for that, they don't believe her. And then we get into the backstory of no one can remember hiring her. The last teacher came down with necrotizing fasciitis.
Yeah.
And it's the fact, though, that she rectifies that as well just to try and keep them on side. Because she sort of steals Scully's pen and then influences her to see the background check.
And make the phone call to Mulder.
And make the phone
to
call to
lure
Mulder.
him away from Osprey.
It's sort of, that doesn't seem to faze Mulder much when he sort of bursts in and goes, what's wrong? It's fine. So after that, though, Mulder goes off to Miss Jim Osprey's house down to the basement long last, discovers that, yeah, the floors are dirt and the walls are red. And then has his, confrontation or discussion with Jim?
The nice parts of Satanism.
They're not Satanism now, because the modern Satanism has also denounced Satan, because they mentioned that in the episode. This is some weird subset.
To be fair, only Mulder calls them Satanists, I think.
That's don't know what they are.
He refers to them as things like our sect. You don't really know exactly what they practice.
Yeah, all we know is it's in German. And they were fleeing persecution.
7 generations.
And viewed Christianity as hypocrisy.
I think he goes further to their beliefs is the fact that they just kind of believe that man is an animal and therefore is no greater than any other animal. Is the core of their belief.
Yeah. But I suppose we should now have the moment you've been waiting for is Mulder handcuffs Jim Osprey to the bottom stair of his basement. And then he's eaten by a snake in a mode that doesn't make any sense from snake eating habits.
I am moving on from being the bug critic to being the reptile critic this week. I have a pet snake. Indeed, Biggles, my snake, is a python, so smaller than the one in the episode, but they work the same way. So, Ms. Paddock's snake, which looks like it's something, a bigger one, like a Burmese python or something. One thing, it's got a beard. And I'm not going to get past this, no, snakes do not have facial hair. But it's also the way constrictors kill. My Biggs eats what we call pre-killed rats, so they're frozen, they're defrosted. I have to heat them up and jiggle them around so my stupid snake thinks that they're alive and will strike and take them off my barbecue tongs. But what he does when he strikes is he immediately coils his entire body around it and crushes it because, in his eyes, this is a dead animal and he doesn't want to swallow it. This is a live animal and he does not want to swallow it till he's certain it's dead. And then he will consume it from the head because, again, he wants to kind of stop it from any chance that this rat is going to bite him back. So therefore, he will grab on and put his jaws around the head first to prevent the rat from, if it's not quite dead, potentially biting him. So what we see in the snake that attacks Osprey is it goes for Osprey while he is still alive, still conscious, still struggling, and eats him from the feet first. And it also devours him in an instant, completely dissolving his body and just leaving a handy skeleton there. So, fair enough, supernatural snakes. When Biggs devours one of his very dead rats that he's also constricted for 5 minutes to ensure that they're very dead rats, it takes him maybe 10 to 15 minutes to swallow this rat, and then it takes him the better part of a fortnight to digest it and pass it afterwards. Because snakes are cold-blooded and they don't do anything that fast. His metabolism is slow, therefore he digests things very slow. So these are my many complaints as to if you would like to subscribe to my thesis about everything that's wrong with Mrs. Paddock's snake, which my only argument against this is a magic Satan snake that Miss Paddock has possessed and therefore it can do supernatural things. Because all we find when Mulder and Scully eventually return to poor Osprey is a very, very gory, digested skeleton sitting in juices and a handcuff with a bit of blood on it.
Thank you. And yeah, I think we'll have to take a super out of snake. So you did just touch on the note I was going to make is it feels really slightly awkward for Mulder to run back to the school, pick up Scully, go back to Jim Osprey's house, find the skeleton, go back to the school again.
It's to just give the snake a little time to eat him, I imagine.
Yeah, but it's all just that trip feels really extraneous and it feels out of place.
I guess we don't know how far the school is, but given the speed they come back, it must have been, in under an hour.
Yeah, it's
they've made it back
handful
there.
of minutes kind of thing. It's despite the biological inaccuracy, it's a great, horrible, jokey death, isn't it?
It's a fun trivia that Dan Butler is absolutely terrified of snakes as well. So there was an on-set comment about the fact that he could not actually speak during the scene when the snake was actually kind of slithering onto his shoulder before, I presume, we switched to the puppet. But they at least did not have to spray fake sweat on him because he was so freaked out by this whole thing.
Poor man.
It is a blooming big snake, that python.
It is a very big snake. I think so. Around this point, we see that Mrs. Paddock now has cat eyes. Just going all in on the whole, there's something very strange happening.
I saw it more like snake eyes.
It could have snake eyes, so that could actually then connect back to she's controlling the snake.
That was my assumption with that flash.
That's fair. At which point, though, the rest of the school committee says enough is enough. We're gonna go and sacrifice Mulder and Scully, especially Mulder because he believes in stuff, so that makes him even better.
And they get pretty close, to be fair.
They do. Mulder and Scully are still on Mrs. Paddock, but she's managed to mislead them enough to get them captured by the rest of the group. And yeah, they drag them off to the showers on the verge of killing them when she possesses the guy with glasses and shotguns everyone. And then himself.
It's lucky that Mrs. Paddock is apparently looking out for them.
Well, she did leave them a very nice message.
It was a pleasure doing business with them.
Yep. Though doubling up as the goodbye message from Morgan and Wong.
Yeah, of course.
Very intentionally meant to be a dual purpose thing. And just like that, the power comes back on. But yeah, I do think the hand of Verletzt is kind of, as much as Aubrey and Irresistible have been upward sign, the hand of Verletzt is kind of like a jump to the kind of, this is like a great episode rather than just a good episode.
Yeah, I think this one's a really good quality. Certainly this season, it's probably been my favourite Monster of the Week episode.
That's probably fair.
It's really solid. It keeps your attention throughout. It's got a good balance between horror and humour.
Yeah.
And some great guest stars as well with Dan Butler and whoever plays Mrs. Paddock.
And Larry Musser.
And Larry Musser too,
so he's not in as much as I thought he would be.
No, he's only really in it at the very start.
He'll get bigger roles as we go.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing him in Jose Chung again.
Do you have anything else for this episode?
No, I think that's everything.
Okay, so next week we have Fresh Bones and Colony, which unfortunately puts us halfway through a pair of episodes there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame as well. I haven't been able to find the novelization for Colony and Endgame anywhere. I believe there is one. If anyone can hook me up, particularly with a digital copy, I like reading them before the episodes, so if you know where I can get one very quickly or download one, that'd be great. Just let me know on Twitter or something.
If you'd like to get hold of us via email, alternatively, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
Alternatively, you can get us over most social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42@universadon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us just by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast.
Thank you. Our theme music is Envision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com. It's licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next week, remember, the truth is out there.